Hey everyone, Yanja back again. Midweek in the car video because I only have time to do these on my lunch break. Today I want to talk about why the comics in the 80s were so good and picking up with the Fall of the Mutant saga, which was one of the defining sagas of its time back in, I think it was about 86. Now this is faded into the annals of memory. It does not have the cultural legacy. It's something a little earlier like the Mutant Massacre has, but this is during the heyday of the comics, and I really want to talk about why. Now, there are a few reasons. Some have to do with writing, some have to do with the art style, some just have to do with monthly issues, but let's take a look. Now, this is a trade paperback, Fall of the Mutants Volume 1. I don't know why it's Volume 1. And it's kind of weird because it starts off, what is this, like 220? Well, the Fall of the Mutants and X-Men doesn't start until 225. So they give us like 5 issues of extra. I have a feeling that there was some compendium before that ended like with 219. So, first of all, let's take a look at what's going on here. Let's look at this team. So, writer, Chris Claremont, one of the best writers in all of comics history, certainly the best X-Men writer. Mark Silvestri. Now, this is not super early Mark Silvestri work. That would be on Call the Conqueror. But this is when he hit the big time with X-Men. He started 218. This issue is 220, so he's just into it. We have Dan Green, who they're calling Finisher instead of Inker for whatever reason. And the colors by Glennis Oliver. Now, for those of you who don't know, Glennis Oliver is one of the greatest colorists of all times. She started in the 60s, and she finished doing regular books somewhere around 2010. Her what would you call it? Comic book DB page is a little fuzzy in some places. She's a real interesting lady who I would love to learn more about, but she has almost no information about her. She married another guy working at Marvel. She won, I think it was an Eisner or Wizard Award, I can't remember, back in the 70s for Best Colorist, and that's it. Okay, letterer, Tom, I can't say his name, or Czechozowski. Possibly one of the most famous letterers, although, you don't think of letterers as very famous. Sorry, Eric Weathers. But he did most of the X books and a ton of other books right before the Image split. I know he went over to Image. He may have stayed at Marvel. I don't remember. Ann Nocenti. Now, she's the one who really took the X books and made them what they're sort of more known for today. Before, it was just Uncanny X-Men. It was their own little corner of the Marvel Universe. She turned it into franchises. Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. Now, if you look at the history of comics, they were sort of on their way down ever since the 1960s. But there was a brief point where they shot back up, and that's due to Jim Shooter. Now, Jim, his big thing was stuff has to make sense. Things have consequences. So you had like Spider-Man marrying Mary Jane. Okay, and that lasted for, I don't know, 2 decades or something. But at this time, things would change in the books. And we'll see this in this series, Fall of the Mutants. So let's start off with the colors. Now, you see how we've got unfinished business here, right? We've got very pastel colors in the back, and we've got more saturated Oro storm in the form of a hawk. Okay, and then down here at the bottom, sorry, it's a little hard to see in the sun here, but we have a very saturated green tree. So just by flat colors, Glynis, we have background, middle ground, middle, foreground, and then the trees are definitely foreground. So she's able to split it out. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, got the cover. Sorry, guys. I'm sure it's quite annoying. Here we go. Now let's take a look at this cover. All right, so X-Men 227, very iconic, very flat. All right, now let's take a look at the cover of this trade paperback. For some reason, they recolored over Glynis's work. Why would you do that? Now, this is a more modern style, okay? So we have more rendering, more shading, and frankly, it looks freaking terrible. A couple places it looks all right. Colossus looks all right, but that doesn't look too far from the original. But Storm, like, man, that skin is just terrible. And this background, it's got gradient. No, go with flat colors. All right. Now let me just flip through a little bit. Oh, by the way, for anyone who buys this, it has Incredible Hulk 340, which guess who's on this? Todd McFarlane. All right. We'll skip through this a bit. So here we have Colossus talking to a bunch of kids, right? And here we go. They need more boy mutants. This one is a mainstay of the team, with a body of organic steel and strength to match. His name is Colossus. Unfortunately, he was severely injured in a battle with some evil mutants called the Marauders. Okay, this is very indicative of the way Colossus talks. Colossus is very much a right and wrong, a good and evil type guy. He's got a bit of a short temper. We have him talking to who would be Roma. Here you have him. Enough. I'm tired of your games. I want answers. Boshimo. If that's how you pronounce it. So, why is this important? Why do I bring this up? Because Colossus sounds like Colossus. He doesn't sound like every other character. Okay? Characters should be understandable by the way that they talk. You have Rogue. You have mind to settle old scores? How about starting with me? They all talk differently. Long shot in the panel before. I don't want to fight you, Spiral. So each X-Men has their own personality. Again, let's take a look at these colors. Sorry about the sun, guys. We have a solid red background, and we have the lighter blues and whites of Spiral's uniform and the black with white highlights of Long Shots. We have very vibrant background, and the less vibrant character sort of pokes holes in it, attracting our attention. Now, Glynis liked to use a lot of these colors. Again, lighter colors in the background, more solid colors in the foreground, and they're green and yellow, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, another reason why these are great, look at the dynamic pose here on Wolverine. Look at that falling back. This guy, he's got this awesome pose like he just swung his sword full out. Wolverine jumping in the air. You don't see dynamic shots like this anymore. Let's go back. Rogue flying into Spiral. The arc of her body. Even the angles here. You've got the Blob looking very frightened. Mark Silvestri likes to do sort of an upshot when he has frightened faces. These are a lot of things that modern comics are missing. And the most important is, if we fast forward to the end, look guys, it's a book that's 30-some years old. I'm not worried about spoilers. So the X-Men die in this series, okay? And they're brought back, but they did die according to the story and the canon. So what happens is, because they were dead, they can't be recorded on film or they can't be on a computer, and it's both good and bad. They sort of lead these secret lives, which allows them to strike at their enemies. But what happens is it screws them over in several parts. People notice, like, wait, there's 5 people over there, but only 2 are showing up on this camera. It was something that carried through probably a good 40 or so issues into the 260s, really almost until Chris Claremont ended his run and the Image guys started theirs. So, just a quick lunchtime video. This is a great buy. I got this in some ways because I am working on House of X, Powers of X video. Why it's just not very good, especially when you're comparing it to the classics. But at any rate, what do you guys think of this video? Do you agree with my reasons that books from the 80s and very early 90s were much better than modern books? If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more comic content and how to make your books better and not make crappy books that Marvel and DC are putting out today, click subscribe. I'll see you guys soon.